Steve, how you doing? Today's video is all about mixing and mastering template. One thing I never did was set up any templates, and after doing my research and looking around, I realised that was a proper schoolboy error. I should have been setting things up so I had consistency between tracks and so I had good quality as well. Because what happens is when you set every track up from scratch and you just say, there's an instrument I like, there's something I like, you treat them in different ways, you process in different ways, you route them in different ways, you just do whatever you feel like at the time. And yeah, great. But you don't sound the same, you don't have consistency, you don't have that thing which glues everything together and makes you sound like an artist. You just sound like little bits here and there. I've never done this before, and now I've had this week looking at it, and I have looked at it a little bit before that, but it just makes so much sense. I realise I've been doing it wrong, I've been causing myself extra work, and it's not a case of even, you don't need to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to use that reverb, that delay every single time. But what you do is have a set of tracks up, which I'll go through in a minute, and they speed your process up, and then you can just drag different things in and out, and overall you're going to get high quality tracks, you're going to get consistency, and you're going to end up developing a sound as an artist. So you're going to have a feel or a sound, something which distinguishes you from other people, and you can experiment as much as you want within that. But to have that consistency is what's going to separate you from the other 99% of people who are doing the same thing that you are. And it's really important to get that. Let's get stuck into it, and I seem to be doing this. Ooh. So here we've got it. This is the mixing and mastering template that I've got, and I did cheat a little bit, but you could call it cheating because, you know, you can't do everything yourself. So I felt like I could do with a little bit of a helping hand, so I was like, right, what's out there? And there's a guy I've watched quite a few videos of called Signs of Life, Chris from Sinfera Records. He's got a lot of ambient stuff, and one of his videos I know he was talking about this template. A guy who does another project with called Ascendant is a Grammy nominated engineer, and he put together this template. So I'm kind of sat there thinking, why not take that on board? May as well use this as my start point, and I can then jump off and take the ideas and find my own direction on it. There's a link below if you want it. It's not an affiliate link. Maybe I should have thought about that before I actually did that, but hey, I'm a generous person. So also a link to the video which kind of got me turned on to the idea of getting this as well. So I'll have a run through it, but the principles are the same even if you put your own template together. So first off is the reference track. I mean, this is something that I've never used, not gonna lie. I've just never bothered. I've had a little listen to something else in comparison to mine, thought, wow, I sound really crap, and not really thought about any more on it, because until sort of the past year, I've always just thought of it as a side hobby, and it's great, it's nice, I've enjoyed it, it's a creative outlet, and it's only when I actually play it compared to other things I realised that I had such a long way to go. The important thing here is to bring in a reference track in the genre you're producing in, have it there, and then you can A/B. So the way that this template's set up is you can click on solo, and that just solos that track above everything else, so that effectively lets you A/B. You can have your track playing, have that, and just keep on playing the two together. Brilliant. We've got a default audio track and a default MIDI track, so these are things you can just drag in every time. So the first thing to say is that you'll have heard about gain staging, and this works on the principles of gain staging. So the way that this guy works is -18. I previously worked to -12 myself, but I know that that was too high anyway. So -18, which means that -18 decibels on every single track, and you make up for that in the buses and then in the pre-master fader and your master fader. The reason behind it is it's fairly simple. We're in the digital world, and what we don't want to do is overload things, because when you overload in the digital world, things sound shit. There's no question about it. They sound horrible. So if you gain stage at each level of what you're doing, then you prevent that digital distortion, you prevent unwanted noise, and you prevent things just sounding awful. So in here we've got a utility. So if your instrument's too loud, you can just use that utility, drag the gain down, and keep it where it should be. The production channel strip here we've got on is Compressor, set to -18 dB with a 4 ratio. And there's a production curve now in the notes that come along with this. I kind of get it. So what they've done is knocked out 6 dB at each point where you get nasty frequencies generally, where things don't really work. And I've done a sort of sample track that I've done in session view, which I'll move on to after this. And I've used it in some, I've knocked it down to 3 decibels in some. It all depends on what you're doing, I think. But it's a really good starting point, and you can turn it on and off and see what sounds good and making my own mind up on that. And likewise for audio, the only thing with audio, of course, when we're talking about minus 18 dB, is that you do need to record your audio at a reasonable level, because that signal to noise ratio of what's coming in is going to make a big difference, and you don't want too much noise on your audio. But that's a topic for another day, and I don't really record much audio apart from samples anyway, so I'll gloss over that as if it's not there. And next we've got buses. So every time you add drums, if you've got a kick, a snare, a hat, whatever you're using, the routing from that default MIDI track would go to the drum bus. So what you do is you bus everything to a drum bus, and then on that drum bus you put effects on all of them individually. So you put effects on all of them collectively. So at the minute there's a glue compressor to glue everything together. No surprises there. But say for example in your drums you might want to actually use the Ableton drum bus effect, which adds a little bit of grit. You can do a lot of different things with it. You might want to put a saturator on, you might want to put your own effects onto it. Putting effects on the whole group of drums, send them all to this bus, and then putting effects on a whole group ties them all together and makes them a cohesive whole. Likewise, we've got bass, synth and pad all doing exactly the same thing. You're bringing everything together. Then we got a pre-master fader. You notice there's a production curve on there again. As most things, you always want to be on that number 2, dropping out below 30 hertz at the very highest, because we can't hear that. That's just 20 hertz is the absolute limit to the lower end of human hearing, and 30 hertz, the majority of people can't hear anything below 30 hertz anyway. And you've got to be careful down there, because it ends up adding mud to the whole mix. Likewise with the very top. So if you've got things, so like my hearing tops out at about 13 or 14 kilohertz, the highest a human can hear is 20 kilohertz. So things that are up around 15 plus, and because it's a logarithmic scale, when you get over 15, between 15 and 20, it's hardly anything. So things up there just don't really make any difference to your music, and they can add unwanted noise, and they add to the overall noise limit. So you end up with reduced headroom with frequencies that don't really do anything. So in your pre-master fader, you get a chance, all the buses go to the pre-master, and you get a chance to treat everything the same on the pre-master fader. One thing which isn't in here as well, which another thing you can add, is a ghost track. So if you want to use your kick drum to pump things, and you don't want your kick drum playing all the time, but when it's not playing you still want your bass to be pumped like the kick drum's pumping it, you add a ghost track and put a kick playing constantly on that ghost track. So you would turn off your ghost track, say this was the ghost track, you would turn it off, but you would still be able to feed audio from that track into a compressor to achieve that pumping effect. So utility here, this is, I'm not really sure why it's here actually. I think it was something to do with the effects that come with the package. So there are like big range of effects you can use. So on this here we've got A, B, C, D, E, F with template effects, which are actually really handy. So we've got the Berlin delay, another using the echo, plank loop, another one using the echo, earth room, which is a big reverb, airlock, which is another reverb, and nostalgia for infinity. This is actually a really nice sound and reverb, but as I'll go into in a bit, I'm all about the Valhalla at the minute. I absolutely love the Valhalla reverb, so I like this sound and I think it'll work really well for something else. So, and then as with everything, I mean sends, I'm going to assume that you're kind of up on send effects, and let's get stuck into the main thing. So I'll show you now the session view that I've got going on. I've got some coffee there. I mean, that's it really. It's in a Christmas cup, and it's not Christmas, it's the middle of the year, but the dishwasher was kind of full and I've run out of coffee cups. So moving over to what I've done, I put together a few sketches. I didn't get full ideas down. I haven't taken it over to arrangement view because I just didn't get the time with all the other things I was looking at this week. No reference track as of yet because I'm not referencing against anything. I don't have anything there to do. I've not got an audio track in it. On the kick, I've got a sampled kick. I have put a saturator on it, and then we've got the production channel curve. So after the kick and the saturator, I've knocked the gain down to keep it to that -18. Looking at the gain staging. I've got a hat rhythm. I'm just using a simple drum synth hat. You can see, I'll play a little bit of this. So this is kind of the bass loop that I put together. So with the hi-hat, I've got quite a simple rhythm, but using the drum synth one, which you can get some nice things out of it. I've cut out all that low end. There isn't really anything there. I've taken a little bit off the top, and I've got an FM synth there with just different sound patterns in the background. You could use, and I saw it on a Signs of Life video actually, a drum rack with lots of different sounds, but this actually does really well because I've got 4 different LFOs of randomizing on different parameters, and it's working quite nicely to create a different sound. I popped a tom in there, and again on the tom you can see I've just rolled off that bottom end because I don't want any sort of grumble in it. I've got its own echo on it because I wanted a simple 8th note echo, a dotted 8th note. On bass here, I've got a bass saws instrument. It's basically just stacked saws, and it's something with a bit of growl to it. Oh, I should mention for the drums, so they're all going to the drum bus. And in that drum bus, I've got the glue compressor, and I've just put a saturator, a bit warmer preset on it. Utility again, just taking it down before it goes in. So on the bass, we have that, and I've just got the channel strip as before, as came with the template. In the second bass, I've not really got an awful lot going on. It's just all contained actually within the instrument itself, same curves. I've got a compressor, which is coming from the kick drum. And then on the bass bus, we're going into taking the top end off it so we haven't got any sort of bad frequencies there. I also need to take the bottom end off that because they can see there's a lot of grumble going on there. And on that bass bus, the decapitator, and I've got punish turned on. You can hear what happens if I turn this off. Totally different instrument, that, absolutely. I do love the decapitator, it's fantastic. On the synth, I've got 3 synth lines. So this one, you'll notice is called 101 Sorry. It's a SH101, it's a really basic version, similar to what it does, but it's not really. This is just something I threw together. LFO to create a little bit of interest in it. And this is getting summed up to the synth bus where we've just got the glue compressor. Likewise for this synth. They both got arpeggiators on them. This is a preset that I made myself, but it's really straightforward operator, using a couple of extra operators there just to add something to it, just on one of the basic setups. Now I've pulled off the low end on that one because this operator's always got a real big low end, so I've taken that out and I've just added again to that to take out that low end because it doesn't quite take off enough dB at that bottom end. And again, that's got its own echo because dotted 8th note's just really simple. I want it to be narrow, whereas the one I've got on the send, which I'll show you in a minute, is got a wide ping pong. And I've taken that down volume wise and it's going into that production channel strip. High synth I've got on a different track which I'll solo. In fact, I'll take over to this particular rhythm. So that high synth is just a basic sine wave synth. Not an awful lot going on. I've got one with unison, one without, and gain to reduction again. Synth bus, so nothing's really happening. Pad bus, the only thing I've got on the pads, I've got this pad playing, is a compressor which is going into the bass. So if I kick that bass on there, go back to the pad bus. The reason it's not doing anything is because I've got it soloed. Very handy when you do these things to actually unsolo it so you can hear the effect. So here we go. you can see on the compressor, every time that bass goes, that's just knocking the pad out a little bit, creating a bit of a bump to the sound. So on the delays, on the the return tracks, show on this synth, all I've got on that is A, which is the Berlin delay, which is a dotted 8, but it's a ping pong, so you're getting some good width on that. On this synth, we've got B, which is another delay. You can see you've got an 8th and a 16th, ping pong delay again. And we've also got the Valhalla, which is on the C send. Now that Valhalla just creates it, I love it. So I stop this. Beautiful tail on that Valhalla reverb, I absolutely love this. Then on D, I'm using the Nostalgia for Infinity, which came with the preset. And that, you can see, is being EQ'd, so it's just the top end. And again, if I stop this, it's got a lovely tail to it. It sounds really, really nice. So all in all, I think I've had a pretty good week with this. It's made a lot of sense. I've kind of got my head around what's going on. And once I've stripped this back and I'm going to start using it as a template with nothing on it, I think it's going to speed up the workflow. I know it's going to give us a consistent quality, and I know I'm going to get a lot of benefits from it. I'm really pleased I've done this because it's kind of forced me into doing it, something which I knew I should have been doing already, but it's kind of pushed that into it. So the only thing that I haven't looked at is on the master fader. I've not done anything on that at the minute, on the pre-master, sorry. But on the master, I've got the Julian loudness meter. So if we play this without the solo, you can see this is monitoring the LUFS. The true peak's quite high, it's the limiter. I'll bring that down. But you can see the thing you need to concentrate on here. This is a free version, by the way. I am going to buy the pro version because I do like to support creators of things like this. But you can see that I'm at -10. Now you'll have read a lot of stuff like for Spotify, you need to go up -14. Now Spotify just puts the volume at -14. However, for this, the dynamics of the music and everything that I've got going on, -10 is about right. If I started playing around with the instrumentation and opening up the dynamics and messing around with that, I would lose the feeling of the song. So this LUFS isn't wrong, but it's to the genre that you have to go to rather than actually doing it to what somebody has written on a platform that says, for Spotify, you must master it for -14 LUFS. So there is also something which, as a mastering chain, I put together. Now, I watched quite a lot of videos during the week on putting together a mastering chain, and I ended up picking out a few. I only really found them on techno, so I picked out quite a few, and I was like, yeah, this is great. But if you listen to this, and turn it off, it sounds crap, absolutely crap. But I was pretty surprised because when I did it on a sort of techno thing, it actually sounded quite good. I was quite pleased with it. But it just goes to show that you cannot set up a mastering chain. Mastering is dependent on what you're mastering for, what the music is, and it also depends on the content you're putting into it. So that might have sounded great on the track, but it could sound great on something, but you've got to do your mastering from ground up on everything you do. You cannot have a simple set way of doing it. Here, I got a little bit trancy with it, and I can't really be blamed. I worked in Ibiza in '99, the summer of trance, and that just kind of got chemically burned into my brains. So you start sketching things and playing, you're like, oh yeah, that's great, and it just kind of went on that flow of things. And when I did music college 2 years ago, then I kind of looked at the way that house and trance and dance was evolving and how it kind of became a lot more orchestral in the way it was. You know, we're talking about time of William Orbit's Adagio for strings and things like that, and I was really interested in the way that it could kind of spread out. I mean, realistically, it's more homogenized these days because everybody uses scale things. Say, for example, on this, I'm on the push and I'm just holding down buttons. Everything's in scale because I've got it set to scale mode. And this is how nearly everybody produces music these days. They use scale modes on things, so you end up with everything sounding very, very similar and in scale, and you don't have these movements and modifications and things that you once would have when people were kind of pioneering and they didn't have scale functions. Anyway, so this last week I've learned quite a lot about mixing and mastering. I did end up going down a real rabbit hole looking at LUFS, the LUFS, and looking at what streaming services want, what certain places want, and I watched quite a lot of videos by professionals, about mastering engineers, effectively all of them debunking the fact that you should be mixing to -14 or -15 or whatever, but saying that you need to mix what sounds right for the genre of music. That was probably about 2 days worth of a rabbit hole that I went down. I tend to do these sorts of things, but I like to kind of understand the subject material, and it is quite a complicated thing when you look at relative loudness and all this side of things. It's easy when you get your head around it in a way, which I probably still haven't quite got my head around it. But it's easier when you understand it, but when you don't, it takes a lot of research and a lot of head scratching to kind of get around it. Hopefully this video was helpful. I've got an accompanying info sheet which gives you a bit of information that you can download for free at the link underneath, and you've also got the link for the template that I bought and the video that kind of put us on that path as well. And next week I'm going to be doing functional music theory so that we can sound a little bit different from everybody else. So hopefully I'll see you then, and I haven't bored the shit out of you with this video.